Welcome. It's nice to see you all. The dreaded pandemic bug got me last time you all met, so fully recovered. Cynthia joined me. We were COVID friends for about a week. Happy to be back. Great to see everyone. Liliana coming?
She's coming at 4.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you to the folks in the back for coming. Ernie, Keegan, let us know what we can do to keep you comfortable. You can stand up and do a stretch. Yeah. Our objectives, this is really another work session in a sense. We're off and rolling. Keegan's got some time here to talk about it, probably in your update, to meet with those of you that have, thank you so much, graciously agreed to be part of the pitch for our event coming up September 7th. So we have a lot of updates for that. So it's kind of split into continuing to grind through what we hope to be a very successful event. What do we need from now until then? Conversations to get us there, things like that, your feedback on certain things, and then a short break followed by what will happen shortly after that, which will be virtual listening and learning sessions. So we've done, as usual, we try to come with some ideas that you guys can take a look at, not like, make them better always. So that's our goal really today, is to continue working on the event, talk about the learning and listening, a lot of things about communication and outreach, and making sure we're getting all this out in the community. And we definitely will get out of here 5 minutes early so that you begin and be out there. Maybe when we do updates, you can give just a little bit of how you sort of anticipate it to go and reminding folks the order and things like that. What else? Did I forget?
I think Keegan also wanted to provide an update on the luncheon, correct? When we get to that.
Yeah, so mics are on. I don't think anyone is on Zoom. I'll double check that in a minute, but the meeting is being recorded. And if someone does come on Zoom, let's be very cognizant of that so that they can hear. So as usual, we do a round robin of the working group and city staff for anything relevant that's transpired in the last, I guess it's just a couple weeks now. We're having these meetings pretty quickly. So let's start over here with Rick. Do you have the gavel, Rick? I noticed somebody might have taken it away from you. I know.
It wasn't me.
Nothing to report. Great. Mary. Oh, thank you, Mary. As a reminder, COVID's out there still. I have masks if anybody would like to have one today to wear. Raise your hand and I can bring one over to you. Great. Thanks, Mary.
All good. I just would like to say thank you so much for the recordings, because I was gone the last week and you got so much done. And it really was wonderful to be able to watch that. So thank you very much.
How was the sound? Did you hear most
Great,
things?
great. And Carrie did a beautiful job. She sure did.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think congrats to everybody who got all this stuff shaped up. So much.
Excellent. Welcome back. Monica?
Hi, no updates.
Mercy.
None for me.
No.
I got nothing.
Nothing.
Ernie, how's your knee?
Don't ask.
Okay, I won't. We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. John? Who just got opportunity? Ann?
I went to a meeting this morning in Cottonwood. They're redoing their community health assessment, 5-year plan for Yavapai County Health Services. And this is their last assessment. It has a lot of good data in it. And of course, the first thing that came up was shortage of healthcare workers. So I just wanted to pass this over to you guys. Jess, there's some good information. There could be a good synergy with them as they come up with solutions. That certainly they're all the health services that they find solutions that would help us, right?
For sure.
I wasn't at August 3rd, but I listened to the recording. It was, the volume's great, audio's perfect, there's a window attendee. So my comment was, and if I wasn't there, and too bad, because you've already moved on, which is fine, I'm willing to accept that, but I felt my observation was that I couldn't find anywhere in July 20th or August 3rd notes around what we're trying to achieve with the keynote speaker. And there was a lot of dialogue around that, and there was slightly different kind of varying opinions of like futurist all the way to like no, must be local person. And so I feel like if there was someone that could, so what are we trying to achieve? I don't feel like that got answered anywhere. So it was hard for me to kind of come down. It's like, if I was in the room, what would I say? I would love to be educated and inspired. If I'm a citizen in the room, I would love to know what are the things that are going to be impacting cities now and the next 20, 30, 50 years, and what are some creative solutions that cities have implemented, like the Telluride and some of the things that we brought back from other, travels and out west and stuff like that. And then I'm educated when I leave the room, I have context and I'm inspired. And then I grab those sticky notes and I go to town. And so can someone in Sedona do that? I don't know. I'm slightly doubtful. So I just wanted to differ with the majority of folks in the room who I think wanted a local person. I would say could be pushed to find some other solution. And so I was wondering if a compromise wouldn't work. I've heard amazing things about Max Liker as well, from my neighbors. And I was wondering if he couldn't be in conversation, our local design architect, creative person, 30 years, he's always built for an ideal Sedona in conversation with this kind of XYZ person. It doesn't need to be a futurist. Someone mentioned Arizona State University at one of the past meetings. They have a public policy institute that understands Arizona issues deeply. I bet they would be someone from that group would be great to kind of talk to us. So we could, kind of do a combo, a hybrid of those two things, still get the local flavor, but get the education and inspiration that we need. If there's someone in Sedona that can do that, awesome. I just feel like that person would come to us, given all the contentious issues that we've dealt with in the last 2 years. And then I love Ideal Sedona as the name of the event. That was one of your sticky areas, right? Max is building for an Ideal Sedona. All the people we're going to talk about today in those different subgroups, they have a version of the Ideal Sedona. So that's just my perspective.
And we'll provide just kind of our musings and what we've been thinking about in terms of from the planning perspective on the keynote side of it. And I think one of the things perhaps when you were gone is we all realized we want it to be the best ever now. And it was already really close to the time. And so we can provide to you what we gather as many suggestions as we could, but you're right, we never had the time necessarily to say, what are the 5 things you want this person to represent? But hopefully what you hear today, we do have a couple people who have committed. And what I want to make sure we don't lose track of is that this is really just the initial event. And so as we think forward to the listening and learning sessions and other community events that will happen, this isn't the only time to bring other people in. So let's continue and maintain a list of people that we know would be good for specific goals for different topics and bring those in if we can't do it. Yes, first.
I do think people are jaded enough where if they don't have a great experience at this one, it's going to be harder to hook them for,
Of course.
the future.
Well, we're hopeful that what we're looking towards, that you guys will be happy with that. Linda.
What am I doing?
We're just doing a round robin.
I'm late. My apologies. Round robin on anything or?
Anything relevant, just this is our time to just give a round robin on anything relevant over the
Two
last
quick
couple
things
weeks.
about housing rent local is ready to launch. So hopefully we'll produce some units with that. And number 2, it's not perfect, but it is, it just hope everybody supports it. It can be tweaked later. And secondly, Big Park School is going to convert this building C into teacher housing. Already on Monday. Wish it could go faster, but it's gonna take a long time to get those plans drawn out, probably 9 months to a year. So unfortunately, it's about 2 years before it's ready. We're gonna try to expedite it, but that's what we've got. Very exciting. It can be around 10 units.
Great. Perfect. City of Sedona, do you want to start something and we'll go that direction?
Sure.
Your new person?
Okay, so, I don't think I have any other announcements, except that we have a new assistant planner who is going to be 100% devoted to community plan. And his name is Josh Humphrey. And so, I don't know what Josh said.
Yeah, I live in Cottonwood, went to ASU. I worked in transportation planning for a little bit at the engineering company. But excited to work with everybody, see everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's only like, what, your third
Third day.
But it feels like it's been here for like 3 years. Jumped right in.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, welcome to Josh. He didn't tell you that he also taught some middle school, so he's very well qualified to wrangle cats in this process. I would also, thanks to everyone for being here, and I would thank my colleagues also from the city, Alicia from sustainability and Molly with economic development. Yeah, so we're really, trying to bolster, the other departments outside of the community development department within the city to really, bring everything they can to this process as well, especially as we lean forward towards this, September 7th kickoff.
And for anyone new in the back, we do save time at the end for public questions and comments, so you're welcome that time to engage. So thanks for coming. Jim.
Period. Yeah, thank you all for those of you who almost everyone provided me with your why you should be involved in the community plan. So we have a running list of quotes, which will be integrated throughout the materials that we are developing throughout this process, recognizing that the September 7th is just the beginning. So if your quote doesn't happen to be used for that one, there are going to be tons of other opportunities. Also, thank you, and I'm just going to queue up Keegan here with her update as well, but thank you all for those who committed to and are making time to do the video pitch. It's going to be great. Keegan is well on her way of videoing and getting that all put together. So we're really excited about that. The postcard as well that will be going out to every current resident to invite them to the September 7th event is at the printers. So yeah, we're well on our way for from last meeting to this meeting, lots of things happening in between. And so yeah, thanks to all of you for committing at the last meeting and then following up on all those things. So really appreciate it. Yes.
Will the postcard go to people who live in the village?
Only city limits.
Can village people still attend?
Village people.
They perform. So the postcard is just going out to, people within, city limits. But anyone else can attend. We won't turn anyone down.
And it'll certainly be much more far reaching on social media and things like that. So hopefully people will come. Yeah, because those village people do a lot of things over here, I suspect as well. Yeah. Perfect.
Great, yeah, I just wanted to give this time for Keegan to update the work group on the other event.
The volunteer appreciation event is coming up on September 22nd. Some of you have already RSVP'd to that. You're all volunteers in here. You're all helping us immensely, so you're all invited. If you did not get an invitation, please let me know so I can make sure that you're on our list. This goes out to our citizen engagement program volunteers who have signed up to be part of work groups and committees, P&Z. All those people are in that database. And I just want to make sure that you're getting that invitation. It's at the Sedona Heritage Museum from 12:30 to 1:30 in the Apple Barn. And I have a guest surprise that I usually blow surprises, so I'll keep my mouth shut. And everyone will get a little gift, and we have a few special recognitions. So I'm hoping that.
Thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to say about the recordings after this, or have you communicated with everyone? They're all ready to go. Reminders.
I feel pretty good about the specific people I've communicated with about their individual part in the video, but what I haven't communicated well about is I'm hoping that all of our work group members can stay for a minute and say something in unison. And it might turn out really bad. It might be like, blah, 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 blah. Or it could just be this really impactful statement that we can come together and say collectively. So I'm hoping that if we end 5 minutes early, we can just all go outside, get as close as you feel is good for you. We might have a few stragglers, but that's okay. And we can all say our theme, which we decided last time is participate in planning Sedona's future. Or if that's way too long for 20 voices, we can also say something like Sedona.com. I don't know. So we can talk about that later. It could just be something short and sweet, catchy, but I'm hoping that we can just get that done real quick. I know a lot of people's schedules and pains that they need to get out of here. So hopefully we can get that on camera. But if you're not comfortable, you're out if you want.
And we will commit to doing public comment at 4:45 so that we can end at 4:55, no later. Okay. Any other questions before we get started? Comments? Okay. Pretty simple, like I said, first half is really about the event itself, and then quickly, because we're gonna start those listening and learning sessions after, we'll go into a table that we've started thinking about. What would the content be, who would speak, but we need a lot of help with that. So as a reminder, let's go ahead and switch to the. We've started a draft list of where all the tables will be, and we'll go ahead and put that in an illustration of the building as well, so it's very clear. I want to say right now that we hope every single one of you can come. And let's talk through today what your role would be at the event. I haven't heard a single person say, I don't want to be involved, or so whether it's speaking or being at a registration table or one of the interactive exercises, we really need your help, and it will be clear in advance of the event where you will be and who will be. So again, the program that we've loosely talked about, again, ideas, we can tweak some of these. We are now about a month out or less, 3 weeks. Yeah, so this meeting today and the final meeting, we can make minor tweaks, but we are at the point where we need to really commit so that we can continue moving forward with content and things like that. So the idea was that the event would run from 5 to 7. We have booked the space, and that folks would arrive, have about a half an hour of mingling with their community, having a light bite to eat, and then several interactive tables, which we'll go over here in a minute. These are not set in stone, none of these are. So if we've missed the mark, or if you'd like to include in some sort of additional interactive element, please. Especially Elisa, we talked about a sustainability table. I'd like to think about what that might be, if that's appropriate. So people will mingle and do some things that are interactive. City staff will be wandering around, SDR will be wandering around. You will be engaging with your community surrounding this particular interactive engagement table. And then we'll make call to order. Probably bring my little bell, which is a nice sound, and people will file into the auditorium. We have secured 2 keynote speakers. So back to the keynote speaker. I wish we would have had more time to theoretically discuss what exactly we wanted. And there was a bit of a split between big global ideas and very, very local. And so what we've tried to do is, and what I think we've done a decent job, and we can talk to you about who they are at this point, is trying to talk about that from the local level all the way to global examples. So the 2 people that we have asked to be part of it, and there's a third that may or may not. We want a mix of experience, we want a mix of genders, things like that. So the 2 folks that have committed, and these have been recommendations that have been kind of just trickling in from either different working group members or city staff. John O'Brien has committed, and we had a lovely long conversation with him. He already has an outline of his talk that's ready and available. Both of the speakers, the other one is a gentleman named Tom Binnings, who I believe Marcy recommended. He does work in China. He has a lot of economic experience. I don't know Tom, but he also has a local connection. He's the current chair of VD Rio, as well as a board member with the library. So they're local folks who have local perspectives and global perspectives. So again, are they perfect? Yes, we hope so. There are a lot of people. We've reached out to the one you recommended, John. I never heard back from him, and it was a timing thing too. We kind of sent out as many as we could, and we hope to re-engage them as people move forward as well. So Cynthia, do you mind just kind of talking about our conversation with John and what we asked him to potentially speak about and what you think he'll speak about? Because he has sent us an outline.
I guess first question is, how many people know John O'Brien? Okay, let's say maybe half. So John O'Brien was not the first community development director, but second or third, pretty early on. And before that, he worked for both Yavapai and Coconino County. So we were hoping that he can provide a historic perspective on planning in Sedona. Basically that we didn't incorporate till 1988. He can talk a little bit about our first community plan, which was, I think, like 92. And he also, besides having that breadth of knowledge, he retired in 2012. So he was here for quite a while, and he still lives here, and he still loves the community. And then the added bonus is he is an entertaining speaker, because we thought it would be good to have somebody with some charisma and humor and all that good stuff. So he will provide the local and historical perspective on how Sedona has grown, how the community plan has influenced that, et cetera.
We also asked him as appropriate to be a little bit engaging with the audience, which as a comedian, it sounds like he's very comfortable doing, not overdoing it, but really trying to engage with the audience a little bit. We asked both speakers to maintain a positive approach without just burying some of the challenges that we know you all face. And so both of them are very solution oriented. So they will, for every challenge that they've seen, they will be providing a solution, whether that's a local solution or a global solution. So John is excited. He also really wants to team up with the other keynote speakers so that when it's delivered, it'll be a package in a sense, instead of, them covering some of the same stuff or something like that. So any questions about John, comments?
Will you give them more time since there's two?
So with an hour, these are some of the things we need to grind through as a group still. So the initial thinking from discussions that we've had as a team, as well as with you all, is that we would have folks come in and then maybe one of we would bring the group to order, and then potentially the mayor would give us very short welcome. And then we need to decide, city staff, if we want the city staff to say something about the planning event in forms of presentation, or just have that as an interactive table. Because we have limited time and we'd like to honor the speakers. And I'm gonna hold on my opinion about that, but what do you all think? Do you want the city to address, this is your community plan, this is what we're gonna be doing over the course of the timeline, or can they visit a station, because it would be the first one? What are your thoughts on that? All of you, let's ask.
I have thoughts, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Is there any reason why the mayor couldn't cover that in a very way, an important part? It's not just the city elected officials leading things, you have a voice too. These are all the ways you have a voice. This tonight, we're talking about blah, 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 like 30 seconds, one and done. That's why you're here.
It seems like a no-brainer.
Okay, and then they can also, she could also send them back out to, because if they missed the table A, they can go back out and learn that. Are you sure about that?
No, not exactly. No, actually, this kind of relates to, I did not submit the information or that one or two sentences. The reason I did, I started to write it and then I realized I think it's wrong because something has changed and I wasn't quite sure, but it used to be that on an agenda for the city council, any agenda item that was new or significant always had a reference to the item in the community plan, very specifically. And, you could, as the council person, you'd go right to it, and then you had all the adjoining information right there. Okay, and I was gonna say in my two sentences that one of the benefits of having community involvement in this community plan is this sets the roadmap for the city council, and that they take every council meeting is driven by what's in the community plan. So if you want to have an effect on what happens to the community, not only we realize you can't come to every city council meeting, but the opportunity now is to set the track that we're going. Now, at some point, I believe that was modified a little bit, and it's no longer exactly that way. I think there's some references to some things occasionally, but I'd like to suggest some city council here that they might relook at that opportunity.
You struggled with your quote a little bit because you're like, is it?
Yeah, I couldn't say that.
I think it's really important that you someone explains the process.
And that shouldn't be at a table. And my other point is, does John intend to use any visuals?
So John is planning on using a few. So the way he likes, and we were supportive of this, no one really likes death by PowerPoint. So he's planning to have maybe 3 to 4. So he'll have something up, slides, 3 to 4 slides. So he'll have one up while he speaks for a while. We'll shift to another one. So yes, but not an overkill, it sounds like.
My suggestion is, because I test it all the time, a whole lot of people don't know what Sedona is. And don't understand the Forest Service piece in the city, private land in the city, and the general boundaries of it.
Yeah, I think I saw, he has sent us a brief out, not a brief, I shouldn't say.
It's not brief.
It's not brief.
It's detailed.
It's a detailed overview of what he would like to discuss, and that is a huge point, is kind of queuing up the crowd as well, asking, do you all know how many sides of Sedona are buffered by Forest Service, as well as hopefully there'll be a good opportunity for him to use a map, right?
So
So
make
yeah,
sure that we have a map, whether it's John providing that as part of this discussion or you all. As
Well, and when we talk about interactive sessions, I think there was one possibility of having a map. It could be a multi-purpose map.
So I think other thoughts on, so the question at hand is, we want to provide enough space for them to speak, but we want people to know by the end of the evening, like, if they don't stop by the table or if it's too busy, what is this thing? And so I'm hearing from John, and I don't know what others think about this, if the city or someone should, maybe it's us, could be us too, laying out 3 slides. This is what it is. This is where we are. This is what you can expect over the course of the next amount of time.
So I'm curious, the initial proposal had SDR, had the planning group, had the mayor. I wonder why one person couldn't just cover all that. Because the time gets wasted in the transition and the
And they get
reintroduction
listening
and the
fatigue.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get listening fatigue. I'd much rather listen to each of them for 15 minutes than, now granted, I already know all this stuff, so that's not fair. All right, at the same time, but could Mayor Sandy or whoever the right first person is do the stuff that John talked about, if John and Brian something covered.
I can't remember if we said, are you going to open it up for Q&A in the
Yes.
big session?
Yeah, so we had hoped that we would have no more than 40 to 45 minutes of talking and listening and a couple of keynote speakers. And then we would have 15 to 20 minutes of moderated question and answer. And then the other idea we had, because that's not a lot, and there might be additional questions too, is that we would provide a space for the speakers to go back to the interactive session afterwards, so that if people wanted to go and ask them additional questions, they could find them out in the lobby at a specific place to continue having the dialogue.
I still think we either need like an MC or voice of God, so I don't know if that
Yes.
decision's been made or not, but.
There will be able to.
Technical term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the
No,
little.
we'll be moderating. The evening, yeah, people can expect.
I was also wondering, are we going to let them know and remind them why, last time, you may have noticed this went out for a public vote. This time it's not, and let them know about our population change. That would be a good slide to show what's happened in the Verde Valley, to give them perspective. Population of Cottonwood and Camp Verde has grown and Sedona has decreased. I think that would be a good, so this is your chance. I mean, that's why it's so important that you attend these meetings and get involved.
I think it's the strongest call for collaboration within the community that there is. So I think that's definitely key that we covered.
Would we get to see the mailer before it goes out?
Yeah, we can look at it. right now.
There's on the website.
Yeah, it's on the
That's
website
where you
already.
need to indicate what you just said. Right, because if they don't show up. then it's already-
yeah, so this is a combination of the front and the back. So the front will only have you're invited to participate in planning Sedona's future, and then back has all of this information. And then a space for the address.
But the press release has not gone out. And so we could also include that in the press release, what you're saying, Tony, about like why there will not be, if people don't know, there will be no vote. And we have a draft press release
We could also put it on the plans to the website, since we're
Yes.
actually directing people there
I
too.
think Josh made a zillion changes to the website just today, so I'm just gonna do that.
It's good, because you're seeing it with fresh eyes, you know.
Okay, so, a short welcome where the SDR brings it to order, short welcome by Mayor Sandy, where she talks a little about the importance of the plan, but then a very short stint from either back to us or the city talking about the plan, why it's important, real life examples of what it guides, why the community should engage, and moving with the keynote speakers. We can do all of that in that time allocated. We told, go ahead.
Quick, as far as recognizing you all as a citizen work group, I think it would be, as opposed to having all of you up on stage introducing yourselves, because as you said, the transition, would you guys be okay sending us a picture of yourselves so that we could have one slide and we can indicate who you are? I can find your picture online, Linda. So you can send me a picture, or I can,
Or we could use the
I
video
like to
clip.
keep it that way, but
I think
that'd be great, and then that way we could just have one slide that indicates who. Chances are many of the people in the community know that you're on the citizen work group, but just also let them know this is another component of the community engagement. Would be great.
We should be name tagged.
Everybody's going name tag, yeah.
So we did at one point talk about, though, potentially having a work group member speak at the event. That's something that you would like to do. I think it's very appropriate. I mean, we have a short amount of time, but it is the face of.
I think it just eats into it. We don't need it, that's all.
So what happens after the keynote speakers? Go straight into Q&A, or is there something else before the Q&A?
No, it's Q&A, moderated Q&A for the speakers, and then release back into the lobby for additional visiting and interactive.
So don't we need to make sure there's, I mean, people are saying, make sure you cover this, make sure you cover that. I think somebody better make the list of between the keynote speakers and the mayor. That, you know, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to hear up on the stage versus what's out in the lobby? You know, how do you, I just don't want people to talk, and at the end, the citizens are like, well, I don't understand this, and why didn't you talk about that?
We have, this is the beginning of it, but we
Okay.
will start with basically a script of a very detailed agenda of the evening, which lines out every single thing. We just haven't, there's a lot of stuff. We haven't quite gotten there, John.
Go, maybe you're gonna get into this, but what are the Q&As, and what are the bookends? What are you gonna, what are they?
Right, so that's something.
Asked to respond.
This is where I think there's some discussion to be had too, because we need to be mindful of. But we don't necessarily, we want the community to be able to voice themselves. But they can come back out to the lobby to talk to city staff. So my initial thinking was that these were specific questions for the keynote speakers themselves. And so they would raise their hand and they would either address a question to John or to Tom specifically. And we would take a handful of those questions, being very clear on if you didn't have the time, you would probably provide note cards or you could go back into the lobby. What we don't want and what we can frame for folks is for this to be not a constructive dialogue within an auditorium setting. And so again, we need to be thinking through what is the structure of the Q&A. There's also the thought of sometimes keynote speakers don't have Q&A, and it is a short event. So we're open to that as well, where instead of Q&A, they go back out to the lobby to speak to the speakers so that we have a little more time. John, your thoughts?
But is it, are you, this is where I'm still a little lost in the process. Are we billing this as an issue identification time? I mean, we've done that in the survey, but the first question is, where's more affordable housing? How do we stop the traffic? And
that is not.
So that's gonna come out. I mean, it even,
Yes.
you just gathered 10 people in Sedona. So do you bookend that? I'm just curious.
Well, let's talk about, our initial thinking was that no, that keynote discussion was not a time for everyone to be identifying issues in there. Because the interactive stations are that space. And so That's not where, that's not the
That's fine.
environment.
It's just clear to me.
Yes.
And I think what
Yes.
Tony said, we would want to educate and inspire.
Mhm.
During the program talk. And then also this is sort of the kickoff to the listening and learning session, so you can call this the listen and learn, you know. Because we don't want to get down into all of the problems necessarily, because we want to inspire people to come up with solutions, but not be negative, you know.
What would be helpful then is to have a slide that has the issues, just don't try to make a statement with them, just the topic. You know, that we all know, we're all aware, traffic, you know, housing, make those the two biggest issues, just kind of what you showed us when you had the results of the postcard, maybe simplified and put the top 10 things there, just to validate that, okay, thank goodness, that's already, they're gonna address that. And number two, one of the things is, I've been involved with a lot of Q&As, you can lose control
Yes,
quickly.
absolutely.
So here's my concern, and that is that, you know, we want to repeat before they ask the question. The Q&A right now isn't to address these particular issues, but in general about the process, about the community plan. And I'm a little concerned, why would they be addressed to John and Tom who know nothing about what we're doing? And it should be maybe perhaps there's a panel of just people sitting up there, and then the right person just pops up and, but they may have a quick question for John or Tom, I doubt it. And then, but they may want Tom to unpack something, and then, you know, they just pop up and answer that question. Then it has that element of spontaneity, dialogue with them. But boy, it has to keep tight.
Absolutely. So I don't think anybody lives and dies by the Red Rock News, but I just feel like the more constructive we get around, don't ask it this way, ask it this way, don't talk about this. We're already covering this. It's not about this tonight. You can see the article the next time the Red Rock News comes out, you know, that city planners try to force people to not talk about the issues. Like some of our candidates running for mayor are going to take that and run with it, right? So I just want to be careful. We can't stop people from complaining. They're going to.
John,
And then do we not do a Q&A because of that? Do we not do it?
I'd like to go to the lobby afterwards and talk to the better.
Well, and so there's so many, there's before, these are all super valid. Yes, let me just go through your questions, but we've done some thinking about grinding through the issues and having conversations with parents, city staff, and you all at each of these interactive stations. And so with your permission, after their questions, can we go through that and then return back to you? John.
I can guess what O'Brien's gonna talk about, but I don't know Tom, and I don't know what, because what are we gonna hear from him?
Do you want to talk a little bit about Tom? And then Marcy, I'd like for you to share your thoughts on Tom as well. And then Molly, who's arrived, right? Molly? You know, didn't you also recommend Tom as well? Tom Bennings?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can show you like his webpage. He owns, and he's an economist. He has, given many speaking, he has been a speaker at many, events such as this. He has the opportunity and the wherewithal, the knowledge to talk about kind of, current trends at an international, national, and regional level, as they pertain to the economy, to policy, to how that affects community. He also has been involved in efforts where he can really encourage community involvement and encourage community engagement to help guide and provide recommendations towards future policy.
He's also a teacher and a certified mediator.
So I get that he's qualified, but what's, I mean, that's a broad range. Is there, have you narrowed it down?
We don't know yet. We'll get there.
So we had a conversation and to get to know him, and he said yes.
The only reason I'm saying this is, so you have these two, and you're right, most of the time you don't have, either you have an interview kind of context, but it's, you know, I just remember recently, Bruce Babbitt talked, and the questions got really weird, really fast.
Yeah.
And to the point that he was almost embarrassed, I think. So I think in deference to being worried about the Red Rock News, it's just clear, you know, we'd like to take a few questions based on what John and Tom have discussed. But later, we're going to go into any thought, any issue you have. And as many of you know, we've already had a survey that kind of directs them as to, okay, I'm gonna go over here and talk about.
So
that.
you can answer, you can if you're the MC,
Well,
you can pre-answer
yeah,
before.
and for every event that we do, we have a set of like, this is how the evening will go. These are the welcoming parameters. This is the function of out in the lobby. If you don't have a chance to do that, this is where you can discuss the emerging issues. There's interactive, yes. And so I still think we need to return to whether or not there's value in having Q&A after you know your community a lot more than we do. That there was a wish for that at one time. That's why I'm bringing it back up. There are risks in doing that. And that's what the interactive stations have been built for people to really grind into some of these issues.
Is it your
You don't want to
suggestion?
silence. If you're asking me for my suggestion, I would say that you don't do Q&A. And that gives us more time too within the program itself.
I think that's more important.
Second that motion. Ernie,
I would almost took the words out of my mouth. I'm going to agree with Linda. I think, we have to be a little aware of our audience. We have driven the audience there as the kickoff event to the community plan. Okay. Those that show up are, we used to call them the walking 250, the same people that are always involved in community events, okay? They care about the community plan. They're there to get involved from the get-go, so to speak, okay? And the exciting, the speakers, are going to gin up some interest and what have you. And there may be a couple of questions like you mentioned for them. But I think what questions we have ought to be more directed to the process and the how this thing is going to work and why and what questions relate to that.
well, and we are very.
Then you've got some meat that they come away with.
But there's nothing worse than going off of what Tony said earlier. There's nothing worse than going to an event and feeling like you're silenced. So just know right now that that is not the way that we operate.
Can we take a vote on this?
On what?
On whether we should have Q&A afterwards or not?
Maybe, but let's wait and do that a little later after we've talked about what the rest of the program could look like.
They're not silenced because what's going to go on in the lobby.
This is the beginning of a giant process to which tonight they will be learning and being able to voice their concerns and thoughts. They will help drive which topics move into more focused dialogue. There will be multiple community events in the future. So this is really the very beginning of what we hope is a very robust process where people can really dive into topical issues.
Yeah, I just want to lose sight that the whole point of this is to explain the community plan process and not get hung up on issues and things like that, because we'll be there for 24 hours. If we start doing Q&A on specific topics, because we all know what they're going to be and that's what they're going to want to talk about. And then there's going to be people coming in with the misconception that they're there to talk about whatever that product, their chance to do this. And so we need to pitch it and sell it and present it as they need to understand what the community plan is. And it took me 4 months into this process to kind of wrap my head around what this is and why it's important. It seems obvious, but it's not. And so I'm thinking about somebody coming off the street who isn't part of the walking 250. Who's not going to understand the process, and we need to pitch that the community plan is a long process where we get their input and they're going to have to participate and be involved as the community. And this is just a kickoff to explain to you, hey, this is a cool vehicle to use. If you don't like mayor, you don't like the city council, you don't like the city manager, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because this is the plan they have to adhere to. And get that message across and get them excited. And I think that should be the beginning and end of the focus.
I think there was maybe a misunderstanding. What I didn't want to see happen particularly is so much time and effort being directed to a Q&A with Tom and John. I mean, they're the kind of the specialty kind of almost fluff at the beginning. But the people came, I think, not so much for that. They didn't want to hear an entertaining speech. They wanted to get informed about the community plan. So however, and I agree with you also that, no, this is not the time to get into the weeds on all those things. But to talk about the process and like you say, it's a long event and all the things that we're gonna do and whatever questions I have in that regard, not just, so how did it feel, John, to be retired for 7
Right.
years? You know,
No, that's right.
come on.
Okay, well, let's move on because I think it paints a bigger picture when we talk about some of the activities that we're considering and we need your feedback on. So I don't need to spend much time on this one, but it does provide, we know we're gonna have an agenda for them with a kind of a map of where the different stations are and what they can, if they're particularly interested in one, they can hit that one first, things like that. And then these, so one of the things we talked about, we heard you all say is we don't want to title these things, we want them to be interactive, right? So Sedona present and future, we have here, do you want to describe it and then pull up the slide with it as well?
Sure. So what we tried to do here, and we're more than happy to share this with you. This is like Andy said, this is like, we're putting this up and you guys can tell us it's awful. You can tell us it's great. You can give us all your feedback. So this is just a draft version. We tried to put a goal for each one and then the materials and who it would be facilitated by, trying to really get towards, like Andy said, that really detailed agenda of how the evening's going to go. So this first one is the goal is to identify opportunities between current, right now Sedona and ideal Sedona. And so what we had thought of for this table, right when you come in, is let me make this bigger. So this would be there, it would be like one big table would have this beautiful agave on
Or whatever picture.
whatever picture on the wall, and people could have sticky notes and they could write kind of this, what do you envision? But at the same time, at that same table, since most people live and die, I should say most, with their phone, you can scan a QR code and it comes up with a question that says, what do you love about Sedona? And it allows them to put 3 answers in. And at the same time, there's a laptop at that same table that is populating a word cloud. So every time someone says scenery, that word gets bigger and bigger for every time that someone else says something. So as people are populating what they love about Sedona, they can see it on a computer and they can see what everybody else has said in some, depending on how big the font size is. It's just another way of, it could be something that people put stickies on the wall as well, but we're trying to get stickies on the wall are hard because it's hard to step back and see what everybody said. Whereas this is a little bit easier visual representation to see the quantity of times people have said something.
Often what we'll do is have you all, perhaps since we're all gonna be there early, populate your sticky note on the wall first so that people aren't like, oh, I'm the first one to do it. We've also, so this would be written on there, specific instructions. They could write, my Sedona has, like, just, this is why I love it, or I want my community to have this by doing this. So just kind of helping them walk through, and they're not alone here. No station is ever alone. There are at least 2 people at each station talking to people, asking them, visiting with them, and explaining the exercise. So this is both. This is what do you love, and then what do you envision for the next 10 years, which is the planning process. Thoughts, comments? So they would do the registration and then they're going in order. They would hit this one first. John.
So I just want to point out, what you were just saying is not what we're doing. If what this is being billed as is just explain the process, we're now into the process because you're in a positive way, you're saying, what do you envision? And the answer to that is less traffic. A negative way is, what do you not like about Sedona? And
right, and to your point, like, so it's twofold, right? There's this education component about what this process looks like. To table C, what's the community plan? What's
Not
the
done.
update?
Yeah.
We're still working on this. How do you play into this process, right? There's gonna be a table that is gonna be primarily just the plan. How does it work? Here's some copies of them. What's an update?
A little bit repetitive to what's going to be said in the session so that they are very clear. They can either digest it at the table or they can digest it in listening to it in both directions.
And what I heard, and I don't know if you can reiterate this or not, Jessica, from the last work session, was that we don't want to focus on the negative. We recognize people are gonna come with their complaints and with the challenges and with their concerns, but we're trying hard to be more positive. So you'll see that in some upcoming slides as well. So this is kind of like, what do you love about Sedona? What do you envision about Sedona?
And to get to your point, John, we have another station that is about the challenges.
Yes.
So I would advise that each station will have specific instructions. You're gonna interact with how you interact, but we'll give you general guidance on, encouraging people to think about what they love and what they envision in a positive way. And people are gonna wanna go to traffic, and you can say, you know what, I hear you, it took me 25 minutes you can commiserate with them on how long it took you to the meeting. Table S has challenges, because we really wanna foster how to provide a solution to each of these challenges. So if you could stay positive, you're gonna be encouraging them to think about the vision and stay positive, and then they can go visit table, whatever it is, to see that they're not the only one who has that challenge and provide solutions for that.
The only point I was making, I don't disagree with this at all. I'm just saying that this is more than a meeting about the process.
Yeah.
We're in the
Yes.
process.
We're in it.
And the only thing I would also like to, those who spent the time to go through the survey, that should be explained somehow, somewhere along the line, how that's fitting into this, whether results of that are there or.
Those
Like
were-
visuals. As people walk
Yeah.
through, it's like a trade show almost of these different exhibits. And
Yeah.
that could be one of them.
And when we get to the challenges and solutions, we'll have a couple of ideas for how we could do that, but those challenges, so we don't like processes that don't build off of another thing. It's dumb to ask the same question and not learn from it and move into the next phase. So we already have enough background from the survey. We want to use this evening in order to better frame the listening and learning sessions. We can't know that we've nailed that just yet. So this is as much learning for us to how to craft the process moving forward. So it's not just about process, it's about starting to key up issues now that will need more attention in the future. The vision piece, we've heard clearly from you, Anne, that yes, the survey says the vision is fine, but people like to ground themselves in positivity sometimes and thinking about what it could be. So that's why this is an important one for them to stop at, Mike.
I just want to say, I'm agreeing with what he's saying, but I also think we have to do both.
Mhm.
I think the keynote speakers need to be driving home the community plan of the power of it.
Mhm.
And then this is the introduction into the bridge into all those individual sessions. So people who came to had to utter their grievances, they get to do that, but they also get to understand the process before they get to do that. So they're like, oh, this is the power we have. And then you launch into these subtopics. They're just going to be kind of appetizers, I guess, for the bigger meetings.
Yeah. So I just wrote down the power of the community plan. What I would like to do before this meeting is over, because both John and Tom are very open in terms of like, they have what they talked about, but they want it to work and be good for this community. So before we leave today, whether it's in a round robin, or I'd like to hear like one statement as I'm a member who will be listening to this. What do I want them to talk about? What do I want to feel inspired by? What do I want the tone to be? It could be any of those things. So let's make sure we do that. Power of the community plan. You can do another one if you want, but I wrote that one down for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Building on what he said, you said John's a comedian. I mean, he could easily say, is there anybody in here who has a complaint or concern? Which,
Right.
And he'd say, this is when you'll be able to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Out in the lobby, when we have these future sessions. I mean, just land it right there with them. This, you will have your time. It's not right now, at that stage.
Okay, so we got through the registration table. Fantastic. The first one, which is really what you love and what do you envision, right?
I think that looks fun. I think people will like it.
Yeah.
I like the
We hire
interaction.
people high schoolers to help people that don't know how to use keyboard.
For sure. Turn from your keyboard. Yeah, okay. So then there will be a table that is primarily manned and womaned by the
Maybe you need to be in costume to get people over.
right? I know, like, so Andy usually cues this up, but I'm going to this time. In Flagstaff, the icon or for the city of Flagstaff is an Avert squirrel. And so they have a squirrel costume that people wear to community
Animal. Do we have an animal?
events. So
This
just
could be a
a just a suggestion.
We should have Elena costume.
But this is an important, so each of us will be working in synchronous together to make sure people, You can do all the fluff you want, and that's important too, but learning what the plan is and isn't is really important. And so the message at this is why we really love like what it is and then how it's worked. Like, did you know kinds of things, like very quick. Did you know that the plan framed the transportation plan? Did you know? So that people who may not spend that much time there, so that needs to be a very engaging one.
Well as visuals,
Yeah,
you know, posters, infographics, that sort of thing.
the land use map, like, and so we're gonna put this back in your court for what your station is gonna look like. And we'll have all this done in advance to really digest it at the next work session in a couple of weeks. So we'll have presentation mode, things like that. What is the community plan? What is it? What's
What
an
is it?
update?
And what's an update? Those kinds of questions.
Here's
Um,
another one. I gotta throw this out. That we need to address. John can do it maybe, but there are so many people who say, well, the council doesn't follow the plan. They change it all the time, and he can give examples where you don't want council to follow the plan. You know, because we've had things imposed on us. One of them is, you know, council was, the last community plan said we were gonna support all businesses that supported tourism. And that has come back to bite us in some ways. And secondly, you know, things have changed like SB 1350, creating all of the short-term rentals and evicting a lot of our people. So they have to react to that, which means that they reacted regarding lodging in some of the CFA. Those are good examples of when you don't just follow the community plan verbatim. It's not set in stone. This is not law. This is not, you have to do it. This is guiding and visionary.
And it's a call to come and show up and to continue to show up. Because
Correct. We have to
policy
continually
aside,
monitor it.
a lot of
and be
decisions
vigilant.
are driven by.
Right. So that has to come out.
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah. Okay,
Okay, so this one is the focusing on solutions. So, this is,
a couple of ideas here.
we have a couple of ideas. We had this idea, we know what a lot of issues and challenges
But
are
not all of them.
from the survey, from conversations you all have brought up. So we were thinking, and this is an idea, of highlighting what the challenges are. And then soliciting with sticky notes. We're not asking for new challenges. We know they are abundant. If you have a new challenge, can you put it in this bucket over here? But for the ones that are up there, can you brainstorm a solution?
This
Can
is
you-
to John's point.
Yeah,
So
so
I
can you-
slightly disagree on I think we should be soliciting new challenges, but asking them first, how is your particular concern? Not, like, having some discussion with them. Does it currently live in here? Because they should feel open. If there's a challenge they're dealing with that's not up there. So, the big question we have is, do we move forward in implementing some possible strategies that we've already talked about? That the city is thinking about already, that working group has brought up in many ways. Do we pre-populate? There's lots of ways you can run these, because if you choose to go that way, you can also take some sticky dots or whatever and say, I can live with it, I hate it, or needs more discussion. So the question is, do we want a blank slate for people to just balance what their solutions are? Or do we want to pre-populate it with solutions and start to gauge whether the community could live with it or not? We can do that. We will be doing that at a later time, but we've done it both ways.
Would that look like we've already started the process without?
No, because you have to be careful, right? And that's why there's tons of empty space on it. There's a whole other wall of challenge. We talk with them, we reframe it. So I don't know where that balance
Maybe it was
is.
your idea of pre-populating the QR code stuff, so there's something in there, when people walk up, they're not just walking up to a blank wall. You could even our suggestions, but you're actually saying like specifically call out the suggestions as from the work group or from whatever and get feedback.
We typically don't suggest, it depends on if you want, it's about moving it forward, right? So do you want to take the time to think about some innovative things that you think your community might be willing to do and start to gauge their feedback? Or do we wait on that a little bit and just, go ahead, John, your thoughts?
I think you wait, because I think we're still in this issue identification ideology stage. And we need to go to a stage of alternative futures. And it would not be now.
And I think that we can have some guidance on the sides too, like, thinking how if they know how other communities have done it. And we were leaning that way, but we wanted to ask you all, do you want to populate any strategies that are already being thought
I
about?
think if you pre-populate some, just so it's not a big blank
Yes.
slate, and the person will read those, and they'll go, oh, that's a good idea, or that's horrible, let me get, and the person facilitating could be taking mental notes as to.
And maybe there's a gold star that if you like something that's already out there, you can star it. Like you're loving it or a heart or something like that. And then we can know. People don't have to keep rewriting things.
Well, and they
And
can
then
do
we
that
force
throughout
them to
the
read it
evening too, right? They could do that throughout the evening. If they hit it early, they could come back and then they could, we'll have some guidance for this probably too, that we'll talk with you all about. Again, because there'll be all kinds of stuff written on there. So is it implementable? Does it meet, that kind of guidance potentially for people to be thinking when they talk about a solution. So in terms of the challenges, we probably won't have time to frame every single one of those today, but would you all trust us to begin to frame them and then bring them back to you in a couple of weeks and we can make some modifications for that?
So, we have a lot of those in the running issue identification documents, that's based on the housing or the household survey and information you all have provided. So we have a good start. Others? Okay with this?
I wonder if you could give them to us in advance of the next meeting, just for us to have a little time to mull it over.
We'll do
Yes.
that. Yeah, they shouldn't take much to put together, and we'll need you to help us reframe them and add additional ones.
Okay. And recognizing, so recognizing that we don't want to have so many stations that people can't get to them all, right? We want to be able to have people be able to register, to go to 2, to listen to the program, to go to 2 more, maybe revisit another one, right? So we don't want to have 8 stations because we don't want people to feel like they have to rush. So, so this is our last planning focused one. Also recognizing we wanted to see how a sustainability type table could fit in here.
And I'm wondering, because I have this still right now, but we may need more than one mapping exercise. They could be specific to specific questions. So we may need more than one. I'll just say that. But walk through how we typically do these, and then let's think about the kinds of questions we would want to ask people on whatever maps we think are important.
I also wanted to add, just from previous experience of this type of thing, it doesn't hurt to have a lot.
Yes.
Because what we've had happen is you've got 20 people all trying to put a poster on the same thing, and it's just too crowded. And so if you do have more things, then people can go over here and wait for some space there.
And you can have identical, just multiple copies of the same station too, just so people can start out.
So this one was getting at kind of, people love maps. We know that people love to look at maps and see where, gosh, there's a problem right here. So this is identifying opportunities in a future Sedona. So this is getting kind of place-based information for residents. I want to see more sidewalks here because I see people walking all the time. It's going to and from a park and there's no sidewalks. So they can place a sticky dot there. The idea here, and let me just show you. Is that we have this big map, and granted, I know it's small for you guys, but we have it's as big as I could get it on PowerPoint. What happens here is people get a data sheet and they get a sticky dot.
That has a number
And
on
the
it.
sticky dot has a number. Every sticky dot has a different number. So they place number 64 at the Y because they want to see something there. Then they take their data sheet, they write number 64 on their data sheet, and then they describe what is the opportunity that I see for future Sedona in that location.
So another thing here that, because there's gonna be some maps with this, the planning station, is we could decide, do we want to have a land use specific map and ask questions about land use, an environment map, or do we want to just have a big map? Okay, because what happens, and then I was thinking, you weren't prepared to do this, great, but can you pull up how we input this in terms of trails before this meeting is over? So what happens with this is you get a lot of dots with a lot of things on there, and then you categorize them into themes, and then we can pull it into ArcGIS. So that green means sidewalk opportunities, and red means additional housing, or, so that's what you can do with this data. And we do this all the time with trails planning projects.
Let me see if I can get a better one, because this one I know is.
Well, the ATC, okay. So thoughts on, while she does that, thoughts on, just keeping it big and bold, everything under the sun, one big, maybe two big maps of Sedona, number of data sheets. What are some opportunities that you see in your community? They often get framed in terms of complaints as well, but we can transform them. Go ahead, John.
I would keep it there because
Mhm.
we've got future meetings.
Absolutely.
And if you have a land use map, then you get trapped into what is the land use map? Is this the existing or is this the future?
Too much info.
And we always, as a matter of best practices, we always take what we learn and present them back to the next time that people have come to talk about whatever topic it is that they're using as well. So we'll have this data crunched down.
So if I'm coming and I want to hit these tables, how much, I have a lot to say. I'm assuming that people are gonna have a lot to say. How much time do they have?
Well,
Are we thinking?
right as we were talking about that, I was like, okay, so we need to discuss whether or not we're gonna do moderated. We could keep we have flexibility. We haven't put an agenda together. If we don't do question and answer, could we do 40 minutes of program, which is still a lot to be sitting in the auditorium. We've told the speakers 15 to 20 minutes. We've said 15 max, but sometimes it's 20. Which would give them more time. Yeah, I mean, this one will take, the one that generates this will take some time. Now, having said that, I'm not leaving at 7. These guys aren't leaving at 7. You may be, some of you may have to go, but we are always committed to staying as long as people want to stay.
We have the auditorium until 8, right?
Yes, perfect. We have an additional hour.
Before
And
exercise or
after.
now? And
Both.
before and after.
Mercy?
I guess I'm just a little bit confused about the actual process too. So we're going to be at these tables facilitating moderated discussions.
No, you're gonna be, so if you're
Not just there to answer questions.
Right.
and to
about
instruct
this.
them, and to instruct them how to do, so let's say you're interested in working on the focusing on solutions one. Someone arrives, there's instructions written there as well, but you walk them through it. Hi, nice to see you. This table focuses on solutions. These are some that have been identified through the survey and previous discussions. We'd like to focus on solutions. So what the idea, you just explain to them. Yeah, and there's some facilitation there too. Yeah.
And we will have a mix of volunteers like yourselves, staff members. And for example, let's say, talking to Molly earlier, if Molly's there, for example, if somebody has a question that she could answer. Or if somebody has a housing question, be like, hey Shannon, go talk to Shannon.
It's sort of cheesy, but it's really helpful. If there's like a team, something, whether that's like a colored bandana on your arm or whatever, so we can talk about those details as well.
All the name tags sort of bright yellow for
Yeah.
people who can answer questions or who are part of it.
Just do that stuff. Don't get our opinion.
So just to get you guys, so this is, a community.
It's a much
driven-
larger landscape.
Community-driven event about trails planning on the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. So what we did was we had the community populate any project that they thought was worthy of trails, whether that's signage, that's a new parking lot, it's trailhead, it's a reroute, it's a brand new trail, and they put them all across the landscape. This is the second iteration of that, so that the bigger dots got more votes from the community as a subsequent community event. So little dots like these were dots that got populated. They didn't get a lot of votes. Some dots got, so this project down the road got a lot more community buy-in and support.
Right, and not votes, to be clear, just
Right.
input.
Right, well, it depends on what the process is. For this process, for this process, we're not voting, right? But, so this is what this can look like down the road, so that people can see that they put a dot on the map. And that at the next event they come to, they see that map and they see their dot and they see the information that they wrote, maybe in a digital format. So goes a long way with community relationships, right?
You show them a little bit of metadata and then we can get out.
Sure.
So it's
So,
not just dots, there's lots of information in there.
so this has a description, it has a comment, it has a full comment for each one of these projects, right? It tells you where it is, and then this one had you know, a lot of community support, 100 community comments supporting this.
And then we send it over to our lovely colleague Jessica, and she codes everything, right? So everything that's every new sidewalk is number 2, or every new, so there's lots of ways we can continue generating data.
But it's a cool way that then this, you know, once it's polished up, it can also be on the site, and people can go and they can click on all the opportunities that were populated and that were generated out of this one meeting. And so you're constantly revisiting the same information with your public after they've given you info.
We did something similar with our, Sedona Pathways Plan. It was called WikiMap. Some of you may have used it. But I do have some concern about doing this map play space exercise because it is so specific, you know, like a sidewalk, whereas our community plan is really a bigger picture document. Like we have our bicycle pedestrian plan that we've already, you know, went through this big lengthy process of doing that. We have transportation plan
And that's
place-based.
That's okay, so long as those, that's okay. I mean, people, you can't give them too many rules. They're not gonna understand that. Some of them have never read the transportation plan. But it is okay for the city to filter those comments and say, these particular comments are really important, and we have given them to the people who really care about that. As long as they can follow where they're commenting.
I guess I'm just thinking,
Well, we can
if
also-
we have a limited number of stations and we want to get really useful, productive information out of this, is that the most useful information?
To me, it could reinforce what you're already doing. If a lot of people say, I want another bike path here, another bike path there. Well, that's just reinforcement that you're on the right path.
Is your point though that the nature of this role is to figure out that we need stronger public pathways throughout the city? That's the feedback you want to get versus like on this street at this intersection, I want a bike path.
Right, like
It's very
walkability.
prescriptive. It's very
Right now, in the plan 10 years ago, walkability was very important. And that's why we're out there now trying to build sidewalks and stuff. So it's the bigger picture, we want a walkable city that is between the plan.
I mean, this does lead to the impression that these very small wish list items that people are bringing in, and maybe some of them are larger, are things that are in the scope of this group to address.
Right.
But
Or the
I would
city
also
to
argue.
address.
So I think there's some guidance.
Yeah,
Just
so
like with-
that's my other argument. That was my other argument.
So just like with every table, there's some guidance for what kinds of comments you're looking for. I think giving people spatially explicit areas to work in is really very engaging for them. The other thing that we always do, because somebody, you know, especially when we say these are the kinds of planned comments, this is what's most framed as, this is what's most useful to us. And if it's not spatially explicit, somebody always has like a great idea. We provide an area outside of it, and it's area 40. The city needs to blah, 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 because my comment is not about this road, it's about ideas for the city. So that it's both. It's a spatially explicit exercise that you can then tease out past whatever you need on to transportation. Say, God, everyone talked about biking. You know, there's a lot to being said there. And then also here's this bucket of general comments that can be very specific to like helping them think through what the plan can do and can't do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as long as it's not sort of misleading them or
Yes.
they misunderstand that we are asking for a list of where the sidewalks.
Right, well, and I think that goes to, that goes to like the explanation of the activity. When you place a dot on this map, the city is not gonna address that specific problem. They are trying to get an idea of what kinds of opportunities exist across. And so we, with the help of you, hopefully will get very explicit on the like instructions for this exercise, so that we're very clear in the expectations of the community that if you put a dot here, that doesn't mean that your pet project in front of your house is gonna get fixed or
Or that it
improved.
will even be listed in the community plan.
Right, but that, and you know, maybe we have different colored dots for different buckets. Is this a Parks and Rec thing? Is this a transportation issue? Or, you know, and we're framing these as opportunities, right? This isn't gonna be like, I want this fixed because it's a problem. It's like, I would love to see more of this across the entire city. So you can help us hopefully in crafting that verbiage, but I do agree that having a map is a really engaging activity for the community.
But I think somebody mentioned, we'll need to have multiple maps because different topics.
That gets back to what we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, that some recommended maybe coded stickers provided before. They could be icons or they could be different colors that align with a certain topic. And you can see that as a visual tool for where things are popping up and what types of things are popping up. And that might provide guidance.
One more, you know, I listen to all this. How would you answer the question of what are we defining success of this meeting as? Because I don't want it to be, this is what we don't want to hear, which is what I'm hearing a little out of Cynthia. And it yet isn't clear to me what success is. Are we, you know, are these 4 entertainment tables, or are we, you know, in process? I think it needs to be clear. This is the slot we're filling tonight. There's another slot, there's another spot. And you come away clear. What I also say, you know, ADOT takes a lot of heat on the way they give a community plan, because they've so thought it through on how to control the people in the meeting that, you know, educated people come to the meeting and just go, this is just a farce. They're putting on a little show here to say they have their meeting. So I would like to put as few boundaries on this as possible, but know what we want out of it in the end.
Yes. So I would love to answer your question from our perspective, and that's that a success for our team, and I have utmost confidence in the city too, in terms of their ability to want to meet the community where they are. I want people to come. I want people to feel comfortable. I want people to voice concerns if they have them. I want all of us to work as a team, and for people to engage, as simple as that, because you won't get, you don't get, you know this, you're not going to get the ticky plan elements out of this, but you will hook people to care about their community and make change over time. So for us, it's that people showed up, they seem to be having a really good time, they stayed late, they enjoyed talking to their neighbors about something they maybe never have before. And that's, we try to foster a real sense of community.
I didn't tell them that right up front.
Absolutely, that's part of the message. It's the goal of the evening, and that'll be part of our message when we open the meeting.
And I wasn't implying that I don't want to hear certain things, but it's the flip, it's what you just described.
Yes.
I don't want to be one of those, you know, bureaucrats who
Promising everything.
somebody's like, why did you even ask me to put my dog on the lap? When that's not really what you need to know.
This exercise.
I don't want to mislead people.
And that's why we're really evaluating every single one of these. This is, I mean, I think we still need to have some more discussion about this. Is it every single neighborhood? Is it maybe mentioned in a different way? Do we make buckets where there's a recreation bucket? Or it's already challenging enough when we're calling them opportunities, because people want to put a dot on them and complain about something. And that's okay. That's okay too. They're voicing their concerns.
You know, that there are, I want to go back to something I brought up before in the past meetings. By the way, before I do, as we're talking about, you know, those last dots, Tony turned to me and she goes, this is fun. This looks like fun. And so we're on the right path. I felt the same way. I agree. And it's not that long of a meeting. It is a kickoff. To Mike's point in the beginning, you know, do they understand the process? What's going to be coming up? How they can be engaged. This is the general part of how they can start being engaged. And one of my things is if I come to a meeting and I'm not on this committee, I know about housing, I know squat about sustainability. And so I want to know how to imagine what my town can look like. So tell me when and how that will happen. That's all I'm asking. So the overview, I mean, it could be in the general piece of it, but tell me when that's going to happen. We're going to have people come in and they're going to help me see, as John had pointed out a couple sessions ago, about how we can reimagine some of these places like Harkins and Bashas that would be mixed use and housing and maybe, you know, electric bikes and all kinds of stuff we could have there. But if I am not exposed to that, then I cannot support that and it won't have any strong space in the plan. And I think if people learn it, they're gonna be excited. That's what I'm saying. And I want to make sure that that's clear in what we tell them.
So we're very conscious about who reads people and describes what the evening will be and what the process will look like. We have to make sure that the right, we want everyone literally with something, with a community member talking through something, whether it's the activity, whether it's, so this, Cynthia tried to make it a little simpler. This is the process ahead, very generally, right? So here we are, and we're gonna change the name, because Karen doesn't like the name and pick up from it, right? We have to change it to something else. To your point, exactly, tonight, we're gonna queue up a whole bunch of topics. We're gonna feel inspired, we're gonna queue up a whole bunch of topics. We're gonna think about new things we've never talked about before. We know, this isn't what it's gonna say, it's gonna say something more interesting. We know there are these buckets in the plan, some of which you may be an expert on, others you don't know anything about. We're gonna have some initial discussions about those. We're gonna gather from the community what's most important for us to focus on, and then we're gonna begin having conversations. So sustainability, for example, somebody maybe not even know what that word means. Take the time to explain what that word means. It's gonna be the third in a listening session. You're gonna hear more about how other communities have dealt with sustainability and really dive into that. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, that was just for Carrie.
Oh,
Sorry.
Let's make it bigger. I don't know.
I can't. see the words.
Can you see it now?
I mean, we want this to be helpful, and is it simple enough for the community now to be helpful? No, Tony?
This diagram, the
Yeah.
process about what you're describing
Event.
but this
Virtual
representation.
Are we sharing this? We're good.
Right now, we'd like it to be simple enough for the community
We
to
just create like
digest.
3 visual icons.
Absolutely.
So there's a plan and then there's a learn and then there's an act or
I
something.
mean, the intention here is that some of these topical discussions are gonna be larger than others, right? But if if it's still too busy, we can continue to pair.
Well, I think additionally,
I would like to take a step here.
sure, but ideally, like, this is indicating that there are gonna be multiple ways for you to engage. Here we are tonight. Then there's gonna be listening and learning sessions. Then if you really want to dive in and you have a lot to say, or you know a lot about something, there's focus group discussions. Then there's gonna be community workshops and meetings at various sizes, right? This could be a community group that is a specific group with membership, and we go and we present, or it could be a workshop where we invite a whole neighborhood to come, right? And then ideally what it gets to is that there's these steps to getting a plan, a draft plan, the public gets to hear it and see it one more time, and then it gets finalized, right? So it's showing that there's multiple ways for these community members on this night to see that they can be involved.
Get the process. Different visual.
Okay, 5-minute break, and then it's okay, but we're gonna have to cut the listening and learning session discussion short. That's okay, we have time, we're gonna send you some work ahead of time, and we'll introduce this table for you to start working in when we're not meeting together. Okay. So let's take 5 minutes, thank you, come back at 4:30, we'll have 15 minutes of that, public comment, and then we'll do the filming. So thank you, very helpful thoughts. Good, anytime. Yeah,
If you need anything else from us.
yeah, we can't do it next Wednesday, but we can offer a web. Just we're gonna do that. And not about 2 hours.
I've been in some days and it's all on the water. So we can. They were able. Like we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, is it cooler over there? That's everyone in the queue.
And so first question is. What do you think of? You know, so because some Republicans, some conservatives are like. Yeah. And so we have arguments. Said, oh, and it was like,
you know, as people enter, I went to. Very. Oh, I was. As people saying, it was so shocking. And it's so engaged me when I walked into that thing, it was like, I'm Yeah, I am so.
Okay. The next phase of planning is to take what we learned from the event and combine it with our initial ideas for topics associated with the sessions. Will all be virtual. But we haven't had a ton of conversations about these yet. What we have said, I believe, although there's been some disagreement about this, so we'll need to return to it, is that they would be one a week. Our experience is that evening works best, although I think it was you, Tony, that was saying could be considered a different time, again, virtual only. We've done these, it's easy for people to remember if it's like the same time in the week, like Thursdays from 5 to 6:30. So we talk about timing, but Carrie took a stab, sorry, I'm not gonna say that. Carrie took a chance at the titles for what the topics could be, right? So we aren't gonna call them, this is based on your feedback about land use, circulation and traffic. So we have on the note card that these would be happening in the fall. I think at one time we know that there's an urgency to get them going as soon as possible after this event, which is why we want to start planning these now. Once they start rolling, just a week in between. So we have to have a pretty good chunk of planning done when we launch the whole series. Right now, we have these are based on the chapters of still based on the chapters of the plan. We can bucket these in different ways if it makes sense. Getting around town, growing with intention. You can throw as many darts at these as you want. Striving for connection. Again, there'd be the sub of what that means, because some people think of it in plan use as well. Embracing and protecting local beauty, the challenge of housing, enhancing community vitality. Molly, like it's it, who knows? And we've talked about which ones are fitting for community listening and learning sessions. Hour and a half, there would be a combination of a short presentation with some key questions for people to break into small breakout rooms to have discussions about challenges and, kind of continuing to chew on the things we have been. Brian.
I didn't see art anywhere.
It's in there.
Where?
Is it with community? Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be,
Let's put that one in there.
so
Apologies, Nancy. Goodness sakes.
we're only gonna have one of these.
Just start, so these will queue up which topics need more discussion. Maybe they all do, but we'll have a sense as a planning team, the things that are really, that you're gonna have to dive deep into, versus this will help set us up. Like, do we need to talk a lot about open space and parks? Don't know. Do we need to talk a ton about housing? Probably. So it's gonna help us queue up which discussions and how we move forward with these topics. And
How is growing with intention different than diversity? The economic diversity, isn't that part of growing with intention?
my understanding is that economic vitality has to do with economic diversity in terms of people that work here versus land use, which is different.
Should we turn uptown into like
Right.
housing, high density housing, like land use, right?
So which one? Okay, so
So Molly's work is economic.
if I want doctors to come, it's not in community vitality. it's-
So here's the thing. So there are so many topics. The question is, how and when do we talk about them? So these are intended to be another opportunity to come dig a little deeper, like you said, Linda, about sustainability. What does that mean? Alicia in combination with someone else. This is really where we bring partners in, because this is a city plan. But so many people are going to be at the helm of helping implement this, of making decisions, things like that. So the idea here is that these are co-convened and co-delivered. Co-convening is so powerful from a collaboration standpoint, right? So this first event is being held by Plan Sedona, city staff. Beyond this, we really like to start messaging these with a set of partners. So the listenings and throughout, not starting, not just this. The Arts Council in combination with the city, the Forest Service in combination with the city for land use. I don't know what combination it would be. I totally forgot the question. Yeah.
Maybe we just need a paragraph for each of them to say
Yes.
that covers.
Sure.
Well,
That
yeah,
Taglines, right?
or the
Kind of marketing
taglines, maybe rework.
Right.
Be open.
So what's the only thing that's important for today, is Cynthia and Jess and others have given us a list of city staff. These are not gonna be just city staff discussions. So we need to be thinking about and utilizing your expertise on who should join a city staff member for these topics. So we'd like,
And recognizing like the name of the topic, the whatever,
Right.
how we phrase it, that can be reworked. What we really need to do is start reaching out to these people to ask them what their availability is, would they
Yes.
be willing, etc.
Monica,
Do I get to suggest somebody now?
Absolutely.
Great. I suggest Jan Mark sorry, I'm butchering his name if he's watching this. He's the program and marketing coordinator at Sedona Public Library. It's really great.
somebody get somebody. Yeah.
I'm sorry, for which one or which one?
For the let's see, striving for connection.
That's a good
I'm sorry.
His name is J and second word MARC. Third word QISUNBING. I will give you this card because
Is he the face of the library?
Yes.
Oh, we met him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's totally charismatic, will be a great speaker. He's good with kids. I have another suggestion.
Yes.
Please, Mr. Bob Wench, actually talked to both of these people. He helped found Sedona Charter School. I think he's a familiar face for the community. And I don't know where I would put him. Maybe in
Their education.
So Cynthia,
So we have this.
I'm gonna cue you up for this discussion we had on this call. Yes, I'll set it up. So we hear you with, as it relates to healthcare. But that we have to decide when is the most appropriate, how do we talk about it? Starting when, in what format, all that. And so, and there's other issues, short-term
Education.
rentals that are more specific, right? One could argue that healthcare could live under the economic diversity. How do you, or housing, how do you provide housing for people to come here to live, to be the doctors, or so just let her share her thoughts really quick, and I'll stop touching. Sorry.
Okay, so I guess back it up just a little.
Yeah.
So listen and learn sessions. So the learn piece is where we will have the panelists, and these topics are arranged by community plan chapters. And so, for example, I just keep throwing this out there because it's easy, economic diversity chapter. Molly will be one of the speakers. We'll probably have someone regional from the Verde Valley join her. And so what we want to do is explain to people, this is what the plan said. This is what the city is doing in relation to the plan, what we have done, what we are doing. And then, we'll have the partners there and she can explain how we're working with the partners on this. And then we get into the question and the discussion portion. So because this is based on the community plan chapters and we're trying to educate people on what's in the community plan, a bunch of these topics are not in the plan. So I guess the way I was envisioning it is that those topics are going to come up in the discussion. And then, like she was saying, they lead into, we're gonna need a focus group on this topic. Or it could be that one of the panelists might say, schools is the example we use a lot, is that the city doesn't have jurisdiction over schools, but is there an aspect to schools that could be addressed in the plan somehow? Healthcare would be an example of what aspects of healthcare are we talking about? Are we talking about land use, meaning, medical offices or medical centers, where those are located? That's a land use issue. More of a community issue might be, do we have enough doctors, that sort of thing. So that's why some of these are gonna live in multiple locations, and part of the discussion might be, we're gonna need a chapter about healthcare, or,
So we're not limited. The question is, we could do these forever. Which topics do you want to have this particular way of communicating about? That's the question. And so healthcare, it's a tough nut to crack. And so maybe that's more right for focus groups discussions moving forward in terms of very specific questions, maybe not. And so our question at hand is, right now, they've been organized by the topics within the plan. If there are other big ones we want to have listening and learning sessions about, we can, but we recognizing we could just do that forever as well, right? Questions, thoughts? 7:43, I'm watching, I see you moving. Okay, John.
I want to understand the listening side. So just giving a structure of this and who's listening?
So we built this idea based on feedback from you all that the community needs to learn and to share. So the listening portion would be listening to educated people talking about a topic and listening to one another. So there would be a short presentation about, and we're gonna work hard, so it's not like the plan says, we're making it exciting. These are the topics associated with arts. This is how it's changed. These are the current policies related to it. These are some of the challenges that have been identified. So they're learning about the history of art, whatever is important to learn about art. And then we queue up questions and they go into breakout rooms to have conversations with other community members about improving policy associated with, maybe that's not the right one to connect, but things that are plan element related. How do we make changes in this? Do you think your community would do X, Y, and Z? So the listening part is the learning from the staff and listening to one another.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yep.
So, the city, all of us here are going to be listening to them, what are their questions, their comments, etc. And also learning. So it's both directions, the listen and the learn.
And we talked about some of these potentially even being, I mean, some of them can be, they have some flexibility in it. They shouldn't be the same agenda. Some are going to lend themselves more to maybe a small panel discussion versus a presentation followed by questions. Mike.
Kind of alluding to an earlier question, what's the goal on this? What do we get out of this as a planning committee?
Yeah, so they will have only come to one meeting for 2 hours. That is very broad brush. We hope they're inspired, but they haven't gotten into the details and the weeds and the complexity of what happens at a plan level in Sedona.
Okay.
That we are asking them to continue to get engaged, and we're beginning to pull out your community that wants to make change and continue to bring them forward. It's not enough to just come to 1 2-hour meeting.
So somebody would sit through one of these meetings and go, okay, I know I need to really be there for that topic in March.
Yes.
Sure that
And one of the questions would be, what, if any, additional dialogue needs to happen about this topic? And we begin to frame up what the next steps are. Then we decide as a team, is this right for a focused discussion? We've intentionally called them focused discussions because focus groups are very different than topical discussions, and we need to figure out what we actually want there. Focus groups are invitation only, experts only, and there's often an application process. That's one route. Versus, but whatever we do, we can't leave the community behind. And so we have conversations with them and queue up what the next conversation with them will be. And we kind of, I don't like the term weed out, but we figure out who the real players. Is it going to be the 250 that come and stick with you the whole time? Or is it going to be settling into more of a working group? Lots of ways.
How many people can come to each of these?
Limitless, virtual. It'll be registration only though. And last quick comment, and then we need to wrap up.
There needs to be a clear connection between the issues that we do in the lobby.
Yep.
And where those issues end up in these sessions.
And the part of the goal of the 2-hour meeting is to verify and build upon, have some time, not much, because we want to kick them off soon. Verify that these are the right topics. So we'll find a way to elicit that as well. We do have a start to some outreach. Pull it up. It's kind of funny. Oh, the Canva. We have a start to some outreach materials that will be, each week we'll be releasing them as well. So here's what the session is. This one's going to be getting around town. This is what you can expect. So each week there'll be another one hitting instant Instagram or whatever. Okay,
And Monica, I'm gonna grab that from you after we're done here.
so apologies, but we really do need to be mindful of everyone's time. Public, we'd love to invite you to ask questions or any comments of the working group or some staff. Nancy.
I just want to tell you, I always find these meetings so exciting. But I'm gonna try and do this really fast. Number one, I cannot read that slide. I am concerned about going to the meeting room and putting up images and not being able to see them. It happens at Yabba College, it happens here in the council, it happens everywhere. And so I think that's really important to have bigger slides. I think that the original date is really important to get it out now. You know why? Because the Sedona Arts Center is having an art opening that night. So people are already planning and I'm upset about that part, but I just, you guys talked about vision and inspiration, and I just want to make sure that that stays in there because I think that's so important. I'm concerned about the registration table. I see 2 tables and 250 people, and I'm trying to figure out how they sign in and do all of that, and it doesn't work in my head. So
Super helpful comments, thank you.
and the other thing I want to say is that I think it's important to say to them, we've talked about teeth to this plan, so it's important to say to them, you are the teeth. You are. And that's all.
Thank you.
Not to, thank you.
I don't know your name, I apologize, but do you have anything to add?
Stroud, I'm Ernie.
Any comments or thoughts on your first meeting?
No, it's just sort of overwhelming. All the different areas and, we've been here over 20 years, so we've seen the community plan of last time and now this newer iteration that is much more with technology, obviously, and much more broader. So thank you for all the work.
Councilor Vicky? I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Kathy Kinsella, I'm one of the city councilors.
Oh, yes, I will review.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your input.
Holly, Councilor?
Saying can't comment, but fantastic.
Great. Molly, and I haven't forgotten you in the back, I see you. Molly, comments?
No, I'm here to answer questions and, chime in if I need it.
Alicia?
Just trying to pass for the information that might be beneficial for this and ongoing things. We are actually, my team and I are going out into the community starting August 3rd to talk about sustainability. Other topics on the table will be resiliency, EV, solar panels, whatever the community wants to talk about. This is something that we're going to kick off, and it will be an iterative process, meaning that we'll just take it as it comes and adjust fire where needed when building the community and taking their feedback. But I'm hoping that whatever we gather there, we'll be able to share with this group so that it will be mutually beneficial. And then hopefully that kind of clears up some of that mystery out there about what sustainability means to sustainability professionals and how we try to apply it. So that'll be happening August 30th. I don't think we've done any posts or anything for that, but it is on the calendar for the library. That's going to be where the first session is held. And then once the team will also be at this event on September 8th. So I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, so we're not missing it. I've got set up, tear down, and the event on my calendar. I promise will be there. So just throwing some of that stuff out there too. And then I had comments on the one that we just talked about, but I will get this my peers over there to talk about some of the things that need to be updated on that.
Okay, let's follow up about sustainability, the table at the event. And then also, we will not leave sustainability behind. And we've talked about how it's a cross-cutting topic, but let's make sure that we make it a cross-cutting topic and continue to ask the question as it relates to all across every learning and listening session that we have. And then in the back, do you have any questions or comments? Great. Thanks for coming.
Can I do some housekeeping? Yeah, so a couple of members of the city have mentioned to me that they don't often get information about like where this meeting is going to be, we switch locations on occasion. And so I don't know how to improve that communication because I don't know where this is marketed to other members of the city. So that's just, one piece of feedback, I guess.
Yeah, I think from a work group perspective, it's at least from our perspectives and from others, we've heard from, it's helpful to move locations because it's nice to not always be in the same building. These meetings are always, we've gotten much better. They're always posted on the city website and the Plans Sedona website in terms of the agenda and the location 1 week prior. So we can talk about Facebook maybe and get that as a regular interview to, or interval posting that. So good feedback. Thank you.
My only other housekeeping comment is I noticed that when we send out like the agenda and everything, there are some folks, other members, other residents that are on that, like Mark, for example, because I don't know all the names of the other folks. And then I noticed one of us will like reply all and start like talking about nuts and bolts. I'm trying to figure out how to keep like cleanliness in that, because should members of the city be part of that working group conversation email thread, but I'm not suggesting you send out 3 separate emails, one to the council members and the mayor, one to the city members, and then one to the working group, because that's just a lot of work. But
No, that was a mistake that Mark was, that he got put on there and somebody said, and he always comes anyway. It's great, but I think we've been advised from the city for agendas only to include P and Z and counselors and working groups. So that right now, that's what we've been asked to do, and that's what we're doing.
So we've heard what you're saying.
Yeah.
Before, and so one of the latest ideas, although a few days ago, I haven't even talked to you guys about it, is
Are we like this or?
I'll do it. To do a newsletter, a little newsletter, keep it short and brief, but it will give information about the next meeting, but also give a brief summary of what a previous meeting covered. And then things like, hey, the next event is September 7th, here's the date and time.
so that's a new email option when you go to e-notify, or?
That was my thought, to do that, as well as just have it go out to whomever's interested.
And as always, please send dates. We have the Reading work group calendar on your internal. Are you guys using? We'll talk about that later. I'm hoping you're using it a little bit. Okay. I really am. Okay, thanks so much. Look, 4:54. It's the Keegan show now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really.
Right, good job, everyone. I was thinking that the work group members could just stay in this room if you're comfortable with that. Around the around the dais and say, plan your Sedona or plan Sedona's future. So just 3 easy words that we can all say together. I'll catch it on video and you can all go home, except for Ernie, Liliana, and Mike. In that order. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, let's go with real quick. Let's do both of them. First, we'll do plans, Sedona's future. So go ahead and gather. No, it's nice. We're gonna dictate everybody else.
Should I go ahead and stop this? Sure. Unless you want to hang out.
Thank you.
Okay.
You stopped it.
Yeah, just.